Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Championship Check-In podcast. We have reached the final week of the season, which means the only thing remaining is the richest game in football, the 100, 200, 300 million pound game, whatever any clickbaity people want to call it. And it is third versus fourth again, Sam. Can we just cut a bit of nonsense that's always out there? Because I'm already fed up of hearing about the big Wembley pitch this week. That's just nonsense, isn't it? All pitches are within kind of regulation. The stadium's very big, and I have seen teams get eaten alive, but particularly Championship players are not going to be fazed by a pitch being a metre or two wider or 3 or 4 metres deeper, right?
You're not going to be fazed. I think it's a thing. It's marginally bigger, probably, than your average, but it's more the occasion, isn't it? And it's probably the layout of the stadium as well.
It's never ending going upwards, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so that size probably gives you the kind of idea that it's a bigger pitch. But I think
they call that a mirage, Sam, in the desert, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the day's energy sapping. I mean, I've been there once, and granted, I was on the bench in terms of my playing career, and it is energy sapping because you're so excited. There's so much that goes with it. You know, even if you've been someone who's played there copious amounts of times, I don't think you probably get accustomed to it, or you grow beyond the excitement levels and how much energy it takes out of you. So I think that's all a massive part of it. And it's normally a bleeding hot day, although it looks like there's a bit of rain forecast, certainly for Saturday. But yeah, I'm sure it's the occasion, more than the dimensions of the pitch that makes players fatigue and cramp up, probably a combination of the two.
I always remember speaking to a Plymouth fan before that Pizza Cup final against Bolton, and I said, I hope you have a great day. Just be careful, because sometimes this stadium eats teams alive, and I think they lost 4-1 or 4-0 or something.
4-0, I think.
Yeah, it can happen, and obviously no disrespect to League 2 and League 1 football players, but there'll probably be fewer people in the stadium for those games, but the quality of a lot of the players in Championship, you do get, you don't get a lot of people. Well, you do get cramp, I guess, which is a sign that things are happening that don't normally happen. Sam, I know nobody particularly deserves anything in football, but out of the 4 semi-finalists, obviously Coventry had a manager fired and a particularly bad start to the season. Bristol City snuck in on 68 points. This is the final, isn't it? Third versus fourth. They're the teams that have been the best. And I know I'm a big advocate for playoffs and tournament jeopardy, but we kind of expected this, didn't we?
Well, I think given the ending to the season, I quite strongly fancy Coventry.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, despite Coventry's, certainly their away form being very indifferent towards the tail end of the campaign, I did fancy them probably just over Sunderland.
So did I. Yeah, so I take that back before the comments go for me.
Yeah, I just thought it was going to be hard for them to switch on Sunderland, but huge credit to them. I think that's a line in the sand, isn't it, for the conversation years ahead. The form is irrelevant coming into the playoffs. I think Sunderland.
Well, it depends on the manager, doesn't it? And I think Lebreese has done really well, hasn't he?
Yeah, whether that was going to be the game plan all along, or that's something he concocted, 72 hours, 48 hours before the first tie, given the opponent, who knows? But it was a really good game plan. I think they rode their luck in the semi-final. I'm of the opinion that Coventry were the better side at the Stadium of Light, and yeah, they did brilliantly. I think the full-time whistle went at the perfect time for them. You only saw one winner once Coventry scored, but as it so often happens,
second period of extra time, there was a switch around there, wasn't there, Sam?
Of course, yeah. And as it so often happens, if you don't get that second goal in quick succession, that spell plateaus, and Sunderland found a way to kind of reignite themselves. Obviously, I think the changes helped, but they really steadied themselves in the second half of extra time. Very even, probably even shaded it. So they did fantastically well, because I thought they were going under. And yeah, I think it's difficult not to feel sorry for Coventry, because I thought across the two games they played pretty well, bar 2 mistakes in the first, and obviously probably not affecting the goal enough in that second game. Not maybe causing the goalkeeper enough problems. But they were still the better team in the second game. But brilliant moment, absolutely loved it. Ballard's winner, and across the season, when they've got their 11 best players out there, Sunderland, they're a really good side, and fascinating going into the final to see what the approach is going to be, given just how different they looked across the 210 minutes.
Well, add another 2 on there for Dan Ballard at
212 minutes.
There you go. Well, look, we seem to have landed on Sunderland. The conversation's just flowed in that direction. So, Sheffield United fans, we'll get on to you in just a minute. But you've kind of exemplified the semi-finals pretty well there, Sam. But let's just talk through the regular season briefly, because I had a Sunderland fan in the comments a few weeks ago saying, Ben, this was the expectation to be in playoffs. And I'm like, well, not really, no, because the end of last season was, dog awful, wasn't it? And the whole Mick Beale thing to Mike Dodds, who was in there for forever, wasn't it? And then we were hearing, Labrise, well, he wasn't the first choice, was he? And obviously the likes of Jack Clark going out in the summer. But, I mean, I think for the first 4 months of the season, the most impressive thing about the Championship, obviously Leeds and Burnley hadn't gone into 100-point drive yet, was Sunderland, wasn't it? It was an astonishingly good start, considering it was a new manager and where they'd come from.
Completely agree. And I think, supporters will probably throw, and fans of the Championship will probably throw Lafay at me and Bellingham at me and Chris Rigg, one of the most talented players in the country. But I think you look at the squad, he's got so much out of that squad.
Isidore and Lafay weren't there to start the season as well, were they? No.
I think he's shown in 12 months, even if it's that, terrific quality, and that he's an outstanding coach. I've liked his approach. I like the way his team plays. I like the way that he carries himself in interviews. I thought his interviews around the semi-final were brilliant. Not scared, and I know this sometimes is a negative. It can be a negative, showing your hand. Not scared to talk about tactics. When he's been interviewed pre-match, he said exactly why he was going with the front 2, why he was adopting that shape. And I always admire that. That shows a real belief in what you're doing and a belief in your coaching. But no, I love watching the team. I think there's a real nice balance. I think when they were at their best start of the season, I think there's that nice balance in trying to play, entice the press. I think Hume tucking in, kind of inverting as a fullback, gives them a bit of control at times, and then they can obviously miss out a pass or two because they got real athleticism and presence at the top end of the pitch. So I think it's a really well coached team that aren't obsessed with possession football. I think they're probably just in the bottom half of possession, if memory serves. So it's a team that can counter-attack. It's a team that can handle the ball with the quality of Rigg, Bellingham, Dan Neil in the midfield. It's got nice variety, and we certainly saw the former in the playoffs. Or we saw a team that were very comfortable in their own skin, sitting in their structure, waiting for the opportunities to counter. And do you know, one problem that they've got is the form of Roberts, I would say. Just thinking out loud, he's off colour, no question.
He's their top assist maker, Sam, across the campaign, and he's appeared in 45 games, so it's very highly likely he's going to start, isn't it?
Do you want to give me his goal involvements across the last 10 dozen games?
Because I can't see one until March. There's an assist against Millwall. That's the only one from 11th of March, one assist.
Yeah, so listen, he did a really good job for the team in terms of getting back, doubling up, helping out, because, with Coventry's fullbacks, we know that's a real asset for them. So he did really well there, but there were some moans and groans that I certainly picked up on the commentary, and he was very, very wasteful giving the ball away. I haven't got the statistics to hand, but I'm sure he turned the ball over quite a lot. He's just not affecting things in the final third. So that is a bit of a conundrum, I think, for the manager. And obviously, all of a sudden, people have returned to fitness, and he's got the opportunity. Mate, you could possibly play Mundell off the other side, who obviously came on and did some bright things. You got Lefay. You could play Rig if you want to maintain the duo up top with Mayenda and Isidore. So he's got some big selection concerns, and I suppose with Sheffield United, you just don't really know what you're going to get from them, considering they've rolled the dice. In the last couple of weeks. An obvious player to highlight to come into the final, given his performances, aside from the goal, I wouldn't be surprised, if we're talking about Ballard doing something similar again. I think he's been colossal defensively. He's a massive reason for how they've got through to Wembley. And he'd be full of confidence when he's attacking balls in the opposition's box as well. So, yeah, he's played his way into, I'm sure, one of the players that's going to be most talked about leading into the Wembley final.
Very much so. Just to round out Sunderland, we'll get to tactical battle, Sam. Just in terms of that, because we've rightly praised them for that start to the season. If I'm a Sunderland fan and I want to win the argument, can I just turn around and say, well, you can't compete with the parachute teams at the top, and it's just resources that meant we couldn't go any further? Is it that simple that they weren't able to maintain the actual automatic challenge?
Yeah, quite possibly. I think there's probably there's an argument to speak of the injuries I think that they suffered at times. The spells they had to go at it without some of their leading lights. And yeah, I think you're just talking about quality. You're talking about a difference in quality, the depth that Sheffield United have got. If you look at the chaps that are currently sitting on their bench, you got Premier League loanees, you've got people that have got promotions, you've got players that got stacks of Premier League appearances. I think that's just the reality of what you're going to have in terms of depth and in your armoury when you come down from the Premier League. So I think there is a clear gulf. What can make up for that is the quality of the coaching and the manager that you can employ, and they've clearly been incredibly clever getting this guy in. I could not have been more impressed with him. Yeah, I think he's been first class, and that closes the gap. And in a one-off game, it's totally different in a one-off game. So yeah, we'll look at the tactical battle, but there's a pretty good assumption that there's going to be very little between the two teams, and it's going to be tight and it's going to be cagey. And if Sunderland players can be 8 out of 10, and a few of the Sheffield United lads have a slight off day, we saw it at the weekend with Crystal Palace against Manchester City. They
Which is arguably an even bigger gap, yeah. They'll
go in as slight underdogs, and the Sunderland fans won't mind me saying that, I'm sure. But I think they, in terms of the performance in the semi-final, they probably had their backs to the wall for quite a majority of that, but came out on top, and they'll just have to do it again.
Right, let's bring it round to Sheffield United. I think there was a lot of people being a bit wise after the event when it came to the semi-final there, because it is playoffs and there is jeopardy, and it was informed by a red card in the first leg. But I heard a lot of people saying, oh, well, look, they're 92 points versus 68. It was always going to be a cakewalk, and 6-0 is obviously a record. Is that a bit revisionist history, Sam? We weren't saying that before the game, weren't we? Sheffield United played it really well, didn't they?
They did. I'm not having that. No, I'm having that the red card had a huge bearing on it. Of course, gave them their upper hand. But yeah, they took care of business in the second game really well. I'm not sure Bristol City could have done much differently, albeit I think they maybe had one or two different permutations where they could have opened up the game a little earlier in terms of having more attacking players out there from the off. When I say open it up, it may have left them a little bit light in terms of them defensively. But I'm sure Liam Manning on reflection will look back at it and think, could I have been a bit more front-footed from the off? Could I got another striker on there for the second game and just gone really for the throat? Could I have played Mehmeti and Twine? Could I have taken out one centre-half? All those things.
Could have done all of those things and still lost, Sam, couldn't he?
Of course he could have. So, The manner of the goals would have frustrated. I think, was it 4 from set pieces across the
Really?
tie? Certainly 3, possibly 4. Got done, didn't they? Some cute set pieces from Sheffield United doing the damage. So that'll be something that'll irk them going into the summer. But in the main, good achievement from Sheffield United, from Bristol City. One thing I'll say on Sheffield United, though, for all the tense games that they've had towards the tail end of the season, all the tight games, their nerve hasn't really been tested across those 2 legs.
No, that's true.
And it certainly was, in some of those tight games. But I more mean the mental state of Sheffield United would have still been a little bit fragile in terms of the way the season finished, the way that it tailed off. And that's something they're going to have to deal with in the final if it is a tight game, where there's going to be pressure. Of course, there's going to be pressure, but long spells where they're maybe having the ball with Sunderland sitting in. It's dealing with all of that, which they've actually kind of been able to ignore to a degree in the semi-final. I just think it played out in a manner, other than maybe a spell where Joe Williams smashes the bar in the first half. It's a little bit tight for maybe half an hour, 40 minutes. Other than that, they coasted. They coasted at Bramall Lane. So they've not had that pressure build on them in the playoffs so far, which ultimately, when it got really tough towards the tail end of the season, Leeds were able to maintain their form, as were Burnley, and Sheffield United clearly tailed off. So we'll see how they deal with it on Saturday.
You make a really good point, Sam, because we were talking a bit before we hit the go button here about the head-to-heads, and we talked about the one at Bramall Lane where Tom Davies came on. And I said to you, that was the point in the season where Sheffield United, every time they were in a tight game, the goalkeeper played well and they nicked it, and they were just really relentlessly winning. And just while you were talking, I was asking myself the question, well, when did they last win a high pressure game? And I'm going back to March, where in back-to-back games before the week from hell, they won at Sheffield Wednesday. It doesn't get more high pressure than Sheffield Wednesday away for Blades. And remember the game after the international break where they really turned up and turned Coventry over, didn't they? And just nailed that one. So it feels like they've got it in them to win tight games because they've done it a load this season. But you make a good point. They haven't done it for a while.
Yeah, let me just come back in there because I don't know if I articulated myself perfectly there. But and they have won a lot of tight games, obviously, when they've not played brilliantly. I remember seeing them at QPR, 1-2-1, I think it was on the day. Didn't play particularly well, get over the line, got players that can produce moments. But, 2 games that I covered towards the tail end of the season, must-win games, okay, for them to get promoted automatically. Bristol City at home, and Millwall at home. Okay, 1-1 with Bristol City far and away the better side. Millwall, 1-0 victory at Bramall Lane, totally did a job on Sheffield United. High pressure games where the expectation was on the home side to go and win, and the players couldn't quite deliver. And I just think, in that tie between Coventry and Sunderland, really tight. Spells where there was a goal either way, where a team was camped in, where you had to deal with periods of pressure. They didn't have that across the semi-final. And I'm sure in the final, there will be a spell or two, whether they're leading or whether it's level, where they're going to have to deal with balls into the box, where they're going to have to deal with a little bit of disappointment for the supporters or the Sunderland fans. In contrast, being really up for a period. Can they defend their box? Can they execute their game plan when the pressure is on because the game is tight? In the playoffs, had the cigar on, didn't they?
Interesting. And I'll just throw in there before we get to tactics. It can be a bit odd. I often speak to fans after the playoff final. They're sat in one end and they're like, it's a bit of a weird atmosphere, wasn't it? Before the game, we're all very loud. And then, the ball goes in the other half, particularly where the opposing fans are. And they get noisy and you get quiet, and it can be a bit of an odd one. We're going to get into the tactics and whatnot, which is going to be a bit tricky for us because we're obviously back tomorrow with the predictions. So Sam's going to reveal what he thinks the game's going to look like without necessarily going the whole hog. Really, really quickly, just a huge thank you to the EFL. I'm going to be there on Saturday And you still have a chance to enter Fantasy EFL. I've got a link down there. You can click through, enter the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel League as well. There's been a specific set for the playoff semi-final first legs, the playoff semi-final second legs, and you can now pick your team of 7 for the final. Go and get involved. I'm terrible at it, so you beat me anyway in the league. Go and get involved. Link down there and the league code in the description. So, Sam, are you about to tell me, I'm going to guess what you're going to say, that we've got 2 teams that perhaps their greatest strength is playing off what the opposition are doing and, going in and stinging quickly, being solid, and individual quality and ruthlessness has been there, and that if both teams elect to play that way, are they both going to be kind of sat in shape? And is there going to be any opportunities for these quality players, your Lefay or O'Hare off the bench or Harmer or whoever, to actually affect it? Are they going to cancel each other out?
I think that's going to be the concern, isn't it? And I think that would be I'd be a bit outlandish to suggest otherwise today. I think that's, on the face of it, what we could be faced with. They've got brilliant individuals, both teams. Neither team is obsessed with having the ball. It could be very, very cagey. I mean, Sunderland, I already touched on, I think have got the ability and the want to be playing through the thirds. The goalkeeper's got a good range of passing. I've spoke about the role that Humes had on occasion, making up an additional number in the midfield. So they can do that. I suppose if they want to have a little bit more control, as happened towards the tail end of certainly the second leg, Rig starts in place of one of the centre forwards, and naturally that's going to give you an additional body centrally.
4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3.
Yeah, despite it sometimes looking like a 4-4-2, I think quite often when it's down on paper, Rig is nominally a centre forward alongside Isidore or Mayenda, but he's obviously someone who's going to come to feet and is going to drop into spaces. So that would give them a slightly different look and maybe mean that they're not going to have to be as back to front as they possibly were in the semi-final legs. So that's something to keep an eye out on. Absolutely. I don't think probably anything changes maybe for Sheffield United, given the success they got, although they've played different shapes throughout the season. So it's been fascinating to see Moore and Cannon paired together, when you would imagine that Campbell's probably been their best chance of a goal across the last 6 months, I would say. He certainly had a purple patch in the spring, looked far and away their most likely goal threat. So to see him on the bench is interesting. Does he get the nod on the big day? Another big source for them is probably the overlapping of Burrows, because in a 4-4-2, Harmer is going to be very much that free-spirited forward player. He's going to come in off the line again into the midfield, try and open up passing lanes, try and get into shooting positions off the left, and Burrows naturally is going to be the one, I'd imagine, thundering down the left-hand side and trying to supply those two forward players, where you now have the prospect of Ballard up against Kiefer Moore, possibly. And I think Tom Cannon, listen, he's not obviously flourished in a Sheffield United shirt. I quite fancied him to go there and probably get himself double figures of goals when he joined. Not happened, but I think he's an excellent finisher. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he takes a chance in the final. I think he's that good when, he's an instinctive finisher. So that's going to be an interesting thing as well. Fascinated to see if Campbell doesn't play from the off and he perseveres with those two after the success they had in the semi. But yeah, on the face of it, I think it's going to be... I think Sunderland will probably play a little bit more than they did in the semi-final. I think that was more to negate, obviously, Coventry's threat and Coventry's style, rather than, all of a sudden we're just going to sit in and be a bit more counter-attacking and be a bit more robust and play for set plays. I think the Sheffield United makeup and the team means that Sunderland will probably have a little bit more of the ball than they certainly had in the semi-final victory. But yeah, it's not feeling to me like it's going to be one for the purists. I think it's going to be low margin, low scoring, and there's probably going to be spells where the ball's turning over quite a lot.
And to be fair, Sam, in Championship playoff, kind of history really over the last 5-10 years, that has just been the case. It's been a massive occasion, and people are only half exaggerating when they call it the £200 million game. If you're saying 100 million quid TV money for 1 year, and if you stay up for that, well, you're guaranteed to stay up for just the 1 year, and then you get that over 2 years of parachute payments, then I get it. So it is just so massive jeopardy, isn't it? So I can see that. Get your thoughts in the comments. Don't worry about getting your predictions in the comments, because that is going to be coming out tomorrow, which is why we've kind of stopped where we did. We've taken you so far. We're not taking you any further. We will do that tomorrow on the prediction show. For one more time, Sam, we've got to say a big thank you to our mate Fev at Fev's Football Analytics, who provides our questions in the quiz each and every week. We were supposed to do this question last week, but unfortunately Sam's missus has had some problems with the old back, so we struggled to fit in the recording at the end of last week. So here we are now, and here is your question, Sam. Are you ready for this?
Too much information. I can't believe my other half's bad back has got a mention on a Championship podcast. It's tremendous.
Bless it. Well, in the comments, can you wish Sam's beautiful wife well with her back problems?
I don't want to say it, Ben, but we're not married yet, so I don't want to. I don't want to say fiance because I hate that word. But we're getting married next summer.
That's good. I'm exactly the same. I just let people go with it when they say Shoney's my wife. I think she likes that as well, doesn't she? But there you go. Now I don't have to pay for a wedding, do I? If anyone wants to start a GoFundMe for my wedding, that'd be lovely. Sam, are you ready for your question, matey?
Go on, mate. Go on then.
This week's question for Sam: what was the total attendance, and it's big, for the two Coventry versus Sunderland playoff games? So the total attendance. So add together the bums on seats from CBS and Stadium of Light over the two games.
And what is it? Nearest two wins, is it?
I don't. What have I got a different question? Have I?
Well, you've got the Bristol City, Sheffield United.
Okay, yeah. So it'd be nearest two then, yeah.
Okay, so you're asking me Coventry. So I think that was probably about. I don't know how many they get in there. I think that.
Can I just say, Sam, Stadium of Light is always bigger than you remember.
Well, I think I know-ish how much that was because it kind of. Right, I'm going to add it up and make it. God, how much does Coventry hold? I had no idea on Coventry, to be honest. I could hazard a guess at it being around that. So,
are you using a calculator?
Let's go 80,000.
80,000. It's not terrible. So
No.
I've got to do Bristol City versus.
Do you want me to give you my workings? Don't give me the answer. My workings
go
are:
on.
I put 47 for Sunderland, 33 for Cov. Was my workings.
I think you might be a bit hot on Cov there, but I think it's not bad. Right, so I've got to do Bristol City versus Sheffield United, and I have no idea what either stadium holds. Christ, I mean, they're both going to have been full, aren't they? Do they both hold? I don't think Bristol City have got that massive Lansdowne stand now, though, haven't they? They must both hold 30,000, Sam. Mustn't they? You're not going to blink there on that one, are you? No. I'm going to assume that they're both slightly over 30,000, are they? 62,000.
Okay. Do you want me to give you the bad news?
Yes.
It's 52,195.
Oh my God. Which one am I miles out on?
Let's say I don't know. He doesn't give me the breakdown, but you're 10,000 out, give or take.
That's pathetic.
You're just under 10,000 out.
Will it surprise you to know that you've won, Sam?
No, but go on. How far out am I?
You were really close, actually. 77,823. So I think it's about 47 and then just over 30,000 at Coventry, which is bigger than you imagine when you're actually
I said 33 for Cov.
Yeah, I think that's too much.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I think. But
basically, I've I've won the quiz and I haven't offended anyone, so that's a win-win.
Well, I've offended your missus,
my
haven't I, for outing her back problems live on the pod. But there you go. There's always that. I think I might have. Well, actually, I didn't show my working, so I don't know who I'm really offending. I've paid them both compliments by saying their stadium's probably bigger than I.
It's bigger, surely. Oh, it would have been a bigger attendance, wouldn't it? But Bristol City's easy 25, isn't it? Is it?
Is it? I just would have thought it'd been closer. It's obviously not, given the answer you've said. But there you go. I'm not an attendance pervert who looks at these numbers. Lots of people look at this every week, don't they, and do point scoring. I don't really care, but I do when it comes to the quiz. And thank you, Fev, as ever. Right, we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. This is coming out tomorrow. We're going to do our predictions, and you will get Sam's take on League One and League Two as well. Come and join us for that. And that concludes our playoff final preview for the biggest game in football.